I didn't know I could do that work. I didn't know I was capable of that. And I decided in that moment that the greatest value of continuous improvement is the quality of life that comes with it. This is a book I just released called Let Go to Lead, and it has 6 habits for creating happier, more independent teams. And it's also the journey of how leaders can have happier and less stressful lives. So it has to do with some lessons I learned. I had developed a core leadership program several years ago. I'd spent my entire career in the field of continuous improvement, and I kept finding that leaders were struggling to coach and let go. Someone finally said, "What are you going to title the book?" I said, "Let Go." So where I'm going to begin today is in my first job after college, just a long time ago. And my first job, had been in a family business, so it was a big company. It was 1,000 people. It was 2 blocks wide and a block long. And I would walk through that plant, and the first group I would run across were packers. And these were women who would stand at the end of a line, and these cups would come down the line. So this company made straws, cups, and paper plates. And so they would pack these cups into cardboard boxes all day. They would fill the box, put the tape on, move it down, do it again. All day, every day. I simply couldn't understand why we would have people doing something like that for 8 hours, minus breaks. So the next job I encountered, you keep walking through the plant, was the straw makers. Resin, when it's hot, smells horrible. So the first thing about that area of the plant is it's dark and dingy. But that job looked even worse because those machine operators would only every so often touch their equipment, and then they would just watch. They just watch the product run. They would stand there for long periods of time and do absolutely nothing. And I thought the days must really drag when all you're doing is watching a piece of equipment run. So the good news was that company, despite all the business, was barely breaking even. At the time, I didn't know that much about business, so I didn't really understand the what's and wherefores, but they did a major business transformation. To this date, it was still the most powerful one I've ever seen. What I did understand is it changed how people worked, and it changed how leaders led. So it's the start of my journey as to why I spent the rest of my life doing this. So today, I'm going to talk about 3 of the habits from the book, how they relate to TWI, and how they relate to my original work at Sweetheart Cup so many years ago. So the first habit, this one I would have never guessed would be the first habit. It's clarity. It's the importance of being clear. What I found in working with leaders is oftentimes if you said, what are the results you're trying to get? You get answers like happier people, more engagement, greater retention, things that better quality, more safety, but they're very generally vague, really what they mean. The next thing they're vague about is what behaviors, what will your people need to do differently to get that improved result? They're like working and working, and they're trying to get better. Mostly like, we'll post the number of accidents. We just keep looking at the number of accidents, we'll get better. So they have a hard time really getting clear, what behaviors am I looking for to change? So as they get clear, I call it reverse engineering. My end in mind, and I'm going this way. It then comes back, what do I as the leader need to do differently, to lead differently, for people to behave differently, to have a different outcome? Now, I don't know the organizations you're in. This one needed better results. It really needed them. And so they needed different behaviors. So after we get back to what the leader needs to do, I've developed something I call a performance improvement cycle. And it really just represents basic fundamental elements of how we work with people. Now, the first element is set up for success. That could mean, do your people have the resources, the time, the basic things they need to do the job? But also, are they clear about the expectations? Now, this is where sometimes it gets very vague. I'll meet leaders and they'll say, I want my people to be more proactive. I want them to take more accountable, more responsible, a greater sense of urgency. But when you go to ask the people what that means, they don't know. And the leader, they don't know either. So then it's clear why they're not getting it. So one of the things I do in my work is I run an experiment. I'm going to run it here with you. Think of a performance gap in your work. Anywhere in your work that you do not see what you want to see. People, missing a behavior you want to see. Do you want more quality, more safety, more efficient production, better teamwork, better camaraderie, no matter what it is? What I find is 9 out of 10 times, and by the way, it's higher than that, it's about 9.5. When they do the root cause, they really can't clear that very first thing of clarity. When they ask themselves, how clearly have I communicated what we need? Or have we even identified what we need? They realize we're stuck at expectations. Now, the good news about that is the leaders can do something about that. The problem's not out here, the problem's here, if we can get more clear. And I literally see leaders almost practice with each other how to do that. Now, in TWI, especially let's say job instruction, you certainly know all about. Let's get very clear, break everything down. How are we going to do things? Now, the work in my leadership program, where it meets up with TWI, this is clarity like on roles. How do we define leaders? Even for people who do production work, how do we define being a team member? How do we define everything else you need to do? How do we define all our expectations of things you need to do and how you need to do them in a way that you know it? I call it the working knowledge of your job, not the piece of paper in the file cabinet somewhere. So in this original company, this transformation I saw, they broke down all the jobs and they started to find waste, a lot of waste in the work. So you can imagine if you had a machine operator, someone capable of operating that equipment, doing absolutely nothing much of the day, that's a lot of waste. So then they had the maintenance department break down the work of taking care of the machine, how to clean it, how to do the preventative maintenance. And so they started to be responsible for the entire care of that machine, other than the heaviest amount of, like if it completely breaks down, it has to be rebuilt. The other thing they added into that job is we used to have quality technicians there, and they would come into the area and they would check your product. They would take notes and documentation to see if it's good product. But instead, what we did is they put that into the job and they expanded the role. And that was the first time what I saw is as we get clear, we take out all the haze, we can make things richer and we can make those jobs have more value and more interesting. So be thinking about your performance gap and whether there's clarity about expectations about that gap. So, second habit, less surprising. The second habit is to motivate more, help a little less. And this is the habit around making sure we work with motivation. We're not telling people what to do. We get them to want to do the work. That's not obviously probably new to all of you. Now, the way I like to think about this is, believe it or not, a model. I'm not big on models, actually, but this one I really love. And it talks about 3 motivational needs that are true of most humans. The first is autonomy. Most humans like to have choice in what they do. They like freedom of choice. The second one is competence. Can I master the work I'm doing? Do I feel competent? Do I feel the things you're asking of me I'm able to do? And the third is relatedness or community. Do I feel connected? Do I belong? Do I feel like I'm in a group that I like to be part of? So if you think about what are 3 things that motivate you in your work, think of 3 things you really like in your work. Now think of 3 things you do not like. What's bugging you? What do you wish wasn't true in your job? You guys found that one quicker, I think. You're going to almost always find they're going to revolve a lot of times around these. Where do I feel controlled versus freedom to move? Where do I feel asked to do things and not capable of them yet, not trained, not given what I need? Where do I maybe feel like I'm on a team that doesn't feel like a team? The cool thing is you can run this same experiment with your teams. Those two questions. What motivates you? What demotivates you? And they will walk you right into what they need. They will tell you right away, here's what I need. Here's what I want. So obviously in job relations, it's all about that. It's all about creating a positive workplace. It's helping leaders create environments people want to work instead of have to work. Now at the Sweetheart Cup company where I started, what was just blew me away was the leaders all had to be requalified whether they could lead or not. They defined leadership as coaches who could motivate or inspire. It was when I first said, they said, if you're going to lead, you must be able to inspire the performance, not direct it. And only about a third of the managers or supervisors stayed in those roles. And they had much broader groups. You know why? People didn't need so much management. They don't need so many people telling them what to do all the time. And the others, many of them, got more technical roles. They were good at the business, good at technical aspects, not great coaches. So they put them in different roles. And that was when I got to see before my very eyes, things become more motivating. I saw people, those first employees, heads were down. Now their heads came up. So, ready for the last habit? The last habit is teach people to fish for solutions. Now, this is that fundamental principle of teach people to fish rather than feed them. Now, this is not new to anybody here. I'll be shocked if that's true. Here's what I know. It's hard. It's much easier said than done. Most leaders feel like someone put them in leadership because they're probably good problem solvers. Remove the barriers. I'm here to be needed. If I'm not needed, what do you need me for? So I need to solve the problems, remove the barriers. You just do your work and I'll take away whatever's the problem. But obviously that's not what they really need. If you want independent team members, they need to solve their own problems. But that means when they walk up to you and they go, here's my problem, can you fix it? What should I do? What should I do? You have to breathe, take a breath, and not answer except to help coach them to see it. Now, some people will say not all the time. Yes, if they have no idea how to fix it, then yes. But the issue for many leaders is they are almost always answering the questions instead of pulling back. So I have found two things helped this. So in this leadership development program that got created, I always say when it worked, I was the most surprised at all. I've seen a lot of leadership training that just does absolutely nothing. And here's how it worked. Not because it was the best training of all time. That is not it. It worked because the leaders shared their journey in letting go. They connected with each other about how hard it is to lead. Wherever they were challenged, they talked to each other about it. And then I realized, in the workplace, we don't generally have leaders share their leadership challenges. They go to lunch, we talk about ball games, we talk about running, we talk about kids, we talk about weddings, we talk about all kinds of things. But we don't share with each other, I'm not the leader I want to be. Even great leaders that I really respect, when I've talked to them, they're like, I should be different. I should coach more than I do. So the second thing that helped beyond community was practice, 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 practice. Again, that's why that's not a training issue. That's just creating ways that leaders practice that skill of coaching until it's part of their everyday life. Now, going back to Sweetheart Cup, what I saw was we started to have all the employees solve the problems. First of all, there weren't that many leaders left, and there were lots of problems. That's why they weren't making any money. So as the people solved problems, you could see things improving. Now, there was this time where we were making straws, and they went out to a big fast food company, and they were not right. So they, of course, complained, and they came back and said, these aren't right. But instead of having a salesperson come back and just apologize, we're so sorry, let me take you out. They had a team of people inside who did the work, meet with their team, and they got to the real root cause. There had been a change in specification that caused it, and so they figured it out and changed it. Now, that wasn't the end of that story. A few months later, they gave us all the straw business. Originally, we only had 40%. Now we had 100%. Why? They wanted to work with a company that has real root cause analysis. They want transparency. They want to know what's going on the other side of the wall. That's what they wanted to do business with. Now, as a lover of continuous improvement, how many lovers of continuous improvement do we have here? Yeah, well, I'm not alone. I realized this has great value, that the more you improve the role of the people, the more valuable everything is, the more valuable their lives are, and the more valuable the business is. So let me introduce you. I use this to represent Pete. I met Pete at the very beginning when I worked at Sweetheart Cup. And I would meet him on the floor and he'd be driving this forklift with this big roll of paper on it. He's a friendly guy. So I got to know him a little bit. But the next time I encountered him, we were in one of those teams solving a quality issue. Now here's this forklift driver leading this team. He's setting agendas. He's figuring out if the team members understand their roles. He's solving things. He's doing problem solving. He's leading. That's great, right? I was like, how cool that a guy that mostly drives a forklift almost all the time can do this same kind of work. But then he comes in one morning and he says, first of all, he kind of put his arms back, chest out. He says, I was talking to my family last night and I told them that I didn't know I could do that work. I didn't know I was capable of that. And I decided in that moment that the greatest value of continuous improvement is the quality of life that comes with it. We let people solve their own problems. It improves the quality of their lives. It makes them more autonomous. It makes them more competent. And it certainly helps build a sense of teamwork. So, certainly quality of life. So, there's a handout with all those notes. If you want to read the rest of the habits, the rest are in here, and as well as the things I've learned that anybody could do to help sustain those habits. Because nobody builds habits fast. There's no magical training, no no special week in the country that'll change. It's practice and community will make a big difference. And with that, thank you so much for your time.